everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Miscoe. I'm a healthcare attorney and happy to be here with you today for this week's ChiroSecure Facebook Live presentation. We're going to talk about today is delegation of services by chiropractors to unlicensed assistants. The reason I chose this topic is because here in Pennsylvania, a case just came down that was devastating on this particular issue, and the court had concluded that chiropractors, notwithstanding a specific statutory rule relative to delegation, that services could be delegated to unlicensed persons provided that they did not require the education, skill, and licensure of a DC. Reading that language and interpreting it to modalities and procedures, the court concluded, based upon expert testimony, that therapeutic procedures could not be delegated to unlicensed assistants. And that has been a consistent problem for the past decade or so. Some states have taken the proactive step of certifying or licensing their chiropractic assistants. Other states have not. And where that has not occurred, there has been a continuing issue, not just with respect to rehabilitative services, modalities, and other procedures like manual therapy and massage. So we're going to try to break this down and identify some of the larger issues where chiropractors face post-payment liability. The most common scenario is delegation of massage. Some states license their massage therapists, some don't. Certainly where the massage therapist is licensed, the issue becomes who is actually performing the massage from a reimbursement perspective. So before we dive too deep into this, we have to look at a couple of concepts. First, if you know anything about Medicare's resource-based relative value system, under that system, they've kind of very carefully deconstructed the value of a service into three components. One is physician relative work. Two is the actual performance and overhead expense associated with the service. And the third is the malpractice component. And when you break this down, if we think about a service that a chiropractor is going to delegate to a chiropractic assistant or even a licensed provider like a massage therapist, the most fundamental thing is we have to look at ultimately who are we going to build the service out under. Now, if it's, let's say, a licensed massage therapist and you're told by the payer that massage therapy is covered and you say, oh, happy day, you hire 20 massage therapists, add 80,000 square feet to your office, and you start doing a ton of massage therapy. However, if to get that service paid, it has to be billed under the licensed chiropractor, now the delegation concept comes into play. And so the first thing that we need to establish is that the physician, the chiropractic physician, did all of the physician relative work associated with that service, which fundamentally means you have to examine, diagnose, and specifically order what's to be done, which means you have to take all the cognitive and didactic work out of the service. And this is true not just for massage, but any other procedure or modality that you would delegate rather than personally perform. So that's step one. Step two is, or step 1A, if you will, is we have to look at the actual order. Is it you send the patient over to your massage therapist to get massage, or do you specifically order the location, the technique, the duration, and all of the other critical elements of that service sufficient to demonstrate that all the massage therapist did was the unlicensed or the rudimentary aspects of the service? And if that's true, then I think you can certainly report the service under the physician. Well, let's take something a little bit more fundamental like electric stim or mechanical traction modalities. Many payers don't have real big issues with the delegation of these services, but nonetheless, to demonstrate that the doctor is doing all the critical thinking work, the documentation should support that the doctor examined the patient, did the diagnosis, and ordered the particular modality or therapeutic service to detail where all the knobs get set, all the buttons, the area of application, and the duration. Now, I get chastised for using this term, but I like to think of it as the monkey boy component of the service, meaning if you're going to order me, Mike the monkey boy, to help you in your office deliver therapies, you got to tell me exactly what to do. I'm not allowed to think. It doesn't matter how smart I am, how long I've been doing it. If I'm an unlicensed person, I can't turn my brain on. If I do, and I'm making decisions about how the therapy is to be administered, then that's unlicensed performance, which not only renders a service non-compensable, but potentially exposes you to licensure liability for enabling the unlicensed practice of chiropractic. So this issue becomes really, really troubling depending on the documentation. And in the case that was lost in Pennsylvania, that case was taken up for a very specific reason, because the documentation did not delineate who was doing what. There were general orders for performance of massage and other therapeutic procedures, unfortunately to include therapeutic exercise, but unfortunately the details of what was to be done, how it was to be done, substantiating that the unlicensed person only provided the contact and it has to be skilled contact. There's still a question as to whether an unlicensed person has a requisite training for that, but I think an argument could have been made that they do, where that training has been provided. But because the documentation didn't delineate and didn't demonstrate that the physician did the what I like to call the physician relative work, that case was lost, and it unfortunately set precedents across the state that can only be corrected now with further legislative action. So we talked about documenting the delegation, and here I can't emphasize enough very specific detailed orders. Fortunately, there are protocols for the delivery of electric stim, traction. Write those protocols, order based upon the protocol name, or if you want to delineate the details in the actual order, that's fine. You can refer subsequently in your subsequent visit notations, mechanical traction performed as ordered, and all of those details then get incorporated into that record. Now, with respect to post-payment liability, most of the challenges that I've seen have focused around massage and manual therapy on a bifurcated basis. One, if it's manual therapy performed by a licensed massage therapist, then we have the classic unlicensed performance issue, at least superficially, because massage therapies in most cases are not licensed to perform manual therapy. Manual therapy falls under the scope of physical therapy practice, certainly chiropractic, as well as medicine. But depending on how well or how precisely the Massage Therapy Practice Act is written, it may exclude manual therapy. And if it does, even if your massage therapist is licensed, their licensure is irrelevant. They're effectively an unlicensed chiropractic assistant when they're performing manual therapy. Because it's a hands-on service, it's very difficult to segregate the physician relative work from just pure performance. But nonetheless, if their license covers that service and you order the technique, then their training and licensure should allow them to perform it under your supervision. The other issue that'll get raised outside of the massage and manual therapy issue with unlicensed persons is their training. How do you document that these persons have sufficient training to do what they do? In some states, they have CA training programs. In some states, they don't. Certainly where there's a licensure or certification requirement, that establishes the training. But if you're in a state like Pennsylvania where they don't have any specific training requirements, rules, programs, it's up to the individual doctor to determine whether the training is sufficient, subject to analysis by the payer. And of course, they're not going to agree. The final issue and why therapeutic procedures are such a big issue is because not only are you required to provide one-on-one contact, the contact has to be skilled. And the question of whether an unlicensed person has the education and training to provide that skilled intervention is certainly a subject that is easily debatable by either side. Again, precise documentation can help, but at the end of the day, the expert testimony in it was called the Cavoto case, the doctor that testified on behalf of the payer concluded that skilled contact requires continuous intervention and alteration of the procedure by the practicing physician, and therefore the education, skill, and licensure of a licensed DC is absolutely required to provide that level of contact. So for that reason, to avoid the delegation issue, you might want to consider the group therapy code where only constant attendance is required. There's still skilled intervention required, but I think to the extent that you can demonstrate that your unlicensed staff are helping set up machines and providing, they're a safety stop for a patient on a wobble board, they're not providing the skilled contact, it might be a safer way to go. I certainly encourage all states to license CAs, as the physical therapists have done with their PT assistants, because they don't face this problem. And until that happens, I think where chiropractic assistants are not licensed, it's going to continue to be an area ripe for post-payment review. That's all the time we have today. Please be sure to check back again next week for an interesting presentation by Dr. Sam Collins. My name again is Michael Miscoe. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you again next month.